the benefits I've experienced from it are beyond anything I've kind of found with anything else. Once I found out that there was a float centre close to us, having had the experience in London, I was, I'm really delighted to kind of know that this place existed. My experience, I've just found that, from a physical perspective, at the very least, my body is kind of responding a lot to being in that space. If I've had a pain anywhere, I come to float and it kind of disappears. And the more I float, the more that kind of helps. And it's, even when I'm in the water, I find myself stretching in ways that kind of I might not stretch if I was out of the water. So I know that it's kind of, doing some great work for my body. And then on a kind of spiritual level, or from a mind level, it definitely helps me kind of quieten the mind and become a lot more kind of peaceful and a lot more rested, a lot more mindful. So, I'm noticing benefits both physically and kind of mentally and emotionally. So yeah, those would be the main reasons. I guess because I float quite regularly, I guess the things that I've noticed more is the fact that, I guess on a physical level, my body is kind of feeling a lot more supple, a lot looser than it was before I was, just floating maybe once or not floating at all. And again, from a kind of an emotional perspective, I guess it's giving me a space to kind of return to. When I have a gap now between floats, there's always that kind of feeling when I get back into the float centre of just that kind of release of energy, like kind of almost like a coming home. And so I find that for me is the more I do that, the more I can touch into kind of just a space that feels very kind of peaceful for me. And the more I do that, the more I touch into that, the more I can then apply that kind of outside of the float centre as well in my kind of everyday life. Will mentioned, writing a journal to me when I started, and it's something that I wanted to do and did write one for a few sessions. It's actually something I didn't carry on with throughout, which is something I kind of, wish I had in a way. But then I'm also kind of the mindset that was part of the process that I needed to go through. In the times that I was writing a journal, every entry was different. Every entry was kind of, some were long, some were short. But it was a really good practice to kind of just put down on paper kind of what was experienced in the float, and then to go back and kind of read them. One of my favourite things to do at the Float Centre is actually read people's thoughts on their experiences, because that's something that Will and Shari offer. They've got a book here, which means straight after your float, if you wish to, you can kind of write down your experience. And I really enjoy reading that, just to kind of just because it I guess through other people's experiences, it kind of highlights things that for me as well, and similarities in that space. And so writing a journal, I think, is something that I would like to have maybe done a bit more of. But having Will and Shari here is great. They've obviously got a lot of experience in floating and kind of what works and little kind of tricks and tips, and they've really created a great space which kind of lends itself to a lot of that. And as I've already said, kind of each experience is different, but being able to be in that space with German to kind of share her experience and my experience, and to be in that space together, it's when we've both kind of been for a float and come out of that and been kind of, I guess, with maybe less anxiety or less stress within us, it just means that we can see each other more clearly and respond to each other and hear kind of each other's experiences. And it's been amazing to do it together. And I would definitely recommend, kind of, if you can, to do it with someone, not to take anything away from doing it on your own, because actually you are in the float on your own anyway. But just being able to be in the space afterwards is something, like I said earlier, about being in London and sharing that space with a few people afterwards. It just gives you an opportunity to kind of reflect on someone else's experience and be witnessed in your own experience, and obviously doing that with the person you love the most is great. So after the experience I had in my first float, there was a guy talking about one of his experiences where he'd been in such a deep space he was able to connect with his unborn child. And so obviously with Jen being pregnant, it gave me an opportunity to be in a space where, whether I actually was or not, I was able to communicate with them on a kind of emotional level at the very least. And just being in that space, I think for me is very rare. It's a very rare space where you're in I choose to be in the dark and there's no sound around me. And I guess one thing I kind of often, not that I can remember, but often kind of relate it to, is actually being inside a womb. It's very safe, you're held, it's warm, it's in floating, it's dark, and there's a few white noises around, but nothing much. And so just being able to, for me, connecting kind of what the baby might be experiencing right now, and just realising how safe they feel inside Gemma's womb. And not only did that help me connect with them, it also helps me connect with kind of what Gemma's experienced. So whilst I might not be pregnant, I guess floating has kind of helped me just be a bit closer to the experience that Gemma and the baby are experiencing right now.